is our confirmation video for the 7th commandment, you shall not steal. A reminder to all you confirmation students, it's our expectation that you will be memorizing all of the 10 commandments. So over the next 3 or 4 weeks, I want you to memorize them using the language of the small catechism we gave you, and if you need that, I can give it to you. Because it's really important that you're able to say the first commandment is this, the second commandment is that, and to be able to just rattle them off as really part of your mind and heart. If you remember last week I talked to you about the distinction between the law and the gospel, and I just want to review that quickly because that's really key to how Lutherans think about the Bible and our life with God. Remember, the law was a gift that ended up turning into a curse because of our self-love and refusal to follow God, and really inability to follow God. And so the law accuses us. And so we could simply say the law accuses us for our purposes. And then the gospel is God's good news. So that when the accusation is leveled, and when it's true, God receives that and deals with it, and there's good news for us. And of course, the place of accusation and simultaneously the place of good news is the cross of Jesus. So remember, the 10 Commandments are not something you can follow. They're something that point you always to Christ. And you're Christians because the life you share in God isn't, oh, I'm a good person and I follow the rules. No, I was a person who was cursed, and then I received the good news and the life that Jesus gave me. So really at the heart of your life as a Christian is the cross and the empty tomb. And that's why Holy Week and Good Friday and Easter is really so much the heart of what we're about. One thing I want you to think about as we talk about the second table of the law is how it is that the commandments are like links in a chain, right? So we could say this is the commandment not to murder, this is the commandment not to commit adultery, this is the commandment not to steal. So those are commandments 5, 6, and 7. And really they're related. Because if you commit adultery, you're actually stealing another person's relationship. If you commit adultery, you can kill a person spiritually, or you can certainly kill their marriage. And so a lot of these commandments are interconnected, and we might say that they overlap, and that overlap is important for us. And the reason that's important for us, that the commandments overlap, is it's easy sometimes for us to start generating lists and to start saying, oh, this commandment said this commandment said that, and to forget what they're pointing at. So what is this larger picture that the commandments are pointing at? They're pointing at fullness of life, right? This is the goal. The reason we study the 10 Commandments, the reason you're in the church, is God wants you to have fullness of life. And when the commandments are broken, then we find destruction of life. And in fact, this gives us an entree to the 7th commandment, you shall not steal. Now, if you remember, when we talked about murdering, we talked about the devil, and the devil as a fallen angel who seeks to accuse human beings and to entice them into evil. And so we said that his ancient name was murderer, and we also said liar. But another title for the devil is thief. All right? And so when we talk about this commandment, you shall not steal, one of the things that we can talk about is the devil as a thief trying to steal God's people. And so Jesus uses the image from John 10, which is of the Good Shepherd. Now, many of you who have gone through catechesis of the Good Shepherd are hopefully familiar with this image, but it's the idea that the way Jesus relates to us is as a shepherd who loves the sheep and protects them from evil. And so here's actually the text from John 10. Jesus says there, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So notice, you'll see a link here, right, between stealing and killing, those 2 commandments, and finally the destruction of life. And that's done by the one who is a thief. But Jesus has come that there might be life and have it to the full. So one of the things that you can think about with this commandment is to steal is to invite destruction of life and community. And the reason God prohibits it is that's not what God wants to see happen. And so when we talk about the meaning of this commandment, we can talk about the negative meaning, the you shall not meaning, we could say you shall not. And we can talk about its positive meaning. You shall then what? What shall you do? And so always remember that when the commandments say you shall not, there's always the opposite of you shall. And what we'll see is the negative meaning will prevent destruction, the positive meaning will encourage life. And it's very practical. It's when you guys are in school, it's when you're at home, it's dealing with people's stuff and their possessions, and it's also just dealing with their wellness. Now, if you remember, when we talked about the last couple commandments, we've then been focused on the neighbor. We've been talking about the neighbor's body, we've been talking about the neighbor's safety, and now we're going to talk about the neighbor's money or property. And this is a big deal, because a lot of life is money or property, right? And we're not just talking about the cash you have, we're talking about even larger economies, but we're talking about people's stuff, what they possess, what their family possesses, and so on. So, this commandment is very simple in the sense that you do not take your neighbor's property or their money. You simply just do not take it from them. Alright? Now that's like, okay, well that's pretty obvious. But ask yourselves, what are the ways that you can take someone's money or property? Obviously you can rip it out of their hands, you can break into their house and steal it, but are there other ways that people's money and property gets taken from them? It's kind of a difficult question, but it's a question we should think about. Now the second thing we want to say with this commandment is, not only are you just supposed to take it, but you're not supposed to get it in a dishonest way. Do not get it in a dishonest way. What is a way that people can be cheated out of their property? What is a way that people can be cheated out of their money? So you could think of someone who offers a scam. Like sometimes you all will be online and click on something and it'll say, congratulations, you've just won an iPad 3. Or sometimes stuff that doesn't even exist. Congratulations, you've just won an iPad 4. And you get so excited, yes, I won something. But it's just a dishonest way of trying to get money out of people or trying to get information. It's like when they send emails that say, congratulations, someone in Africa died, and now you will receive millions of their dollars as long as you give us information, and then people steal from you. So, do not trick people out of their property or money. And so, there's the physical taking, but there's also being dishonest as it relates to other people's stuff. So, beware of being too clever when it comes to other people's possessions. Just because you can do it and get away with it doesn't mean you should. And so the example that we get a lot in the scriptures is the tax collectors. You know, the tax collectors, when Jesus meets Zacchaeus, for example, Zacchaeus then gives back what he stole from people because he could legally take it. He said, the Romans need this, the government needs it, and he took it from them. And then he took even more, knowing that they couldn't resist him. And so the tax collectors, like Zacchaeus, are the scripture's perfect example of thieves who are dishonest. Another example of a dishonest person is Judas at the Last Supper, or close to the Last Supper, when a woman comes and anoints Jesus with her hair and an expensive perfume, and Judas says, oh, we should have used that money for the poor. But then the Gospel of John tells us Judas didn't really believe that because he was stealing from the disciples' money. He was embezzling money. And so he presented it in a dishonest way. And so this is where the Gospel of John presents Judas as a thief too. So when we talk about the negative aspect related to our neighbor's money and property, it's simply do not take it and do not get it in a dishonest way. Now, if we think about the positive meaning, okay, if we're not supposed to steal, how do we relate to our neighbor's money and possessions? Well, you are called to help the neighbor make a living, or help the neighbor as they make a living. So if you were to look in your catechism, for example, something Martin Luther says is he says we need to help improve. So if there are improvements that need to be made, and we can help with that. And if we need to help protect the property, so maybe someone's trying to take advantage of someone we know and love, then we can help protect their property. So we can help to improve, we can help to protect, and that helps the neighbor make a living. And indeed, the Bible puts a special dignity on work, being able to make a living, being able to provide through your work and we sometimes need to help people by improving the work that they're doing. So if you think of some of the laws that were passed, like when kids were working in factories, for example, but also to protect them, so that people can't just come and take their livelihood, and also destroy their ability to make a living. So this is an interesting and difficult question, because especially as the world changes and technology changes, the ways people make a living changes, and so we have to be sensitive to our neighbors. So sometimes you have to teach your neighbor how to do a new thing, because what they did is no longer needed, or what they did has now been digitized or automated. So how do we care for the neighbor? How do we improve the neighbor's state of possessions and also protect them so that they can make a living as well? And again, we're talking about the neighbor's money and property, but for the sake of abundant life. Okay, if we wanted to make a final comment, we could say that the commandments we've seen now in the second table simply are a way for us to flesh out love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. So the first three commandments could be love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And now these commandments are love your neighbor as yourself. So we could say commandments 4 through 10 fill this, and love God with everything, with all that you are commandments 1 through 3. So sometimes people come to Jesus and they say, which commandment is the most important? And he says, well, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So really, part of the commandment here is sensitizing you to the needs of the neighbor. And also, when that mirror gets held up to us, it shows us the ways that we do not love the neighbor, often to get ahead. And so that's just part of life, And so the commandment helps put a curb on our appetite so that we're not constantly trying to take what might rightfully belong to the neighbor, or we're not trying to constantly acquire money and possessions at the expense of the neighbor so that they can't flourish as well. Alright, sometimes I forget to do this at the end of the video, but I'm going to put up some prompts for discussion. The first one is explain law and gospel in your own words. So when we use those words, what do they mean? And that's really important for you to be able to express that and articulate it in your own words. Why is the devil called a thief by Jesus in John 10 when he talks about the Good Shepherd? What is it that he does, and what is his thieving cause? What are the negative ways we relate to our neighbor's money and property? So when the commandment says, you shall not, what are the things we shall not do? And don't just think about other people. Think about where you are. What does it mean to keep this commandment at school, with your friends, after school? And so what are the negative ways that we might relate to the neighbor's money and property? What are the positive ways we can relate? Sorry, that should just say relate instead of related. I always don't like it when I have bad grammar, so I'm just going to cross that out. What are positive ways we can relate to our neighbor's money and property? So if we're not supposed to do some things, what are we supposed to do? What are the ways we're supposed to encourage and support our neighbor having an abundant life too? And now finally, what does loving neighbor as self look like for you? So think about the last couple commandments we've talked about. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. What does loving the neighbor look like? And can you start to express what it means to extend dignity to other people, what it means to be careful with your words and with your conduct, what it means to look out for the well-being of the neighbor's life? So what does loving the neighbor look like? And put that into your own words. Well, this concludes our confirmation video for the 7th commandment, you shall not steal.